have good news and gooder news for you guys today. Today is really not a whole lot different than what we've been doing. So it's not really a whole lot that's new. We're going to do the same stuff we've been doing and kind of like add one super incredibly simple step. And the gooder news is that means we're doing all proofs today! No? Okay. Alright. So, we are just going to kind of add on to what we have been doing. So, we're going to kind of combine what we did in 4.2 and 4.3. So, 4.2 and 4.3, we worked on here's how you can prove that two triangles are congruent. Okay? Now, think back to 4.1. A long time ago, it seemed like. Okay? In 4.1, we just kind of started with the idea, if you have triangles where all of the angles are congruent and all of the sides are congruent, we know the triangles are congruent. And then when we moved on to 4.2 and 4.3, we said, well, you don't need all of the angles and all of the sides. You can have three sets of congruent sides, a side, an angle, and a side, an angle, side, and an angle, or an angle and a side. We said, okay, this is kind of like the minimum you have to have. If you have this, then you know the triangles are congruent. So now if I kind of go back the other direction, if I know the triangles are congruent, so I've proved, yes, the triangles are congruent, I know that all of the corresponding angles are congruent, and I know that all of the corresponding sides are congruent. That's what it means to be congruent triangles. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through using these 4 different ways to prove triangles are congruent. We're going to prove that the triangles are congruent, okay? And then we're going to say, since the triangles are congruent, this side's congruent to this side, okay? So to kind of recap the 4 different postulates, the 3 postulates and the 1 theorem that we learned for how to prove triangles are congruent. The first one was side, side, side. So if you have 2 triangles that have all 3 sets of congruent sides. So side, 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 and then side, side, side. So 2 triangles, 3 sets of congruent sides. You know those 2 triangles are congruent. That same day, we said, okay, if you have a side, an angle, and a side congruent to another side, angle, side, that's enough to say, yes, those 2 triangles are congruent. And then we spent 2 days on that. And then the next day we said, okay, you could also have an angle, a side, and an angle congruent to another angle, side, angle. If you have that, then that's enough to say, yes, those triangles are congruent. And then that same day we also said, okay, you could also have an angle, and a side. And actually the second triangle is not marked correctly. Can you see it? My son does that all the time. I'm like, I'll say, oh, do you know what her name is? Yeah. What is it? I don't know. All the time. Anyway, so every time I ask him something, he says, yeah, I know. What is it? I don't know. Okay. What's wrong with the triangle?
Okay. It's saying that S and N are
Yeah. These should be swapped. Yeah, very good, honey. Yeah, this should be the one marked with 2 dashes. But let's play one. Let's say, okay, we've got an angle and a side. Okay, so as long as you can prove that one of these 4 is true, you know the triangles are congruent. So what we are going to take this a step further today. Today what's going to happen is going to look super similar to what we've been doing. It's going to say, okay, here's your given, but on the proof, it's not going to say prove that this triangle is congruent to this triangle. We are going to have to do that. But the proof today is going to say prove that this angle is congruent to this angle. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to prove the triangles are congruent. And then from there we can say, well, since the triangles are congruent, I know the angles are congruent. Now how we know the angles are congruent is by CPCT. And actually sometimes they throw another C down there. And I should have done it because it just kind of flows better. CPCTC. Okay? What CPCTC stands for is it stands for congruent parts of, there's no A there because it wouldn't flow quite as well. Congruent parts of congruent triangles. Oh, I messed it up. Hold on. First year teaching. I did it first to 11. Corresponding. I knew that wasn't flowing right. Sorry. Corresponding parts. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And we know that. We did that in the first section of chapter 4. We said if these triangles are congruent, then I know these angles are congruent, and these angles are congruent, and these angles are congruent. I know that these sides and these sides and these sides are congruent. We know that. We're just kind of putting it into words today. So what we're going to do today is we're going to end up with our proof, and like one of the steps in our proof is going to say, okay, triangle ABC is congruent to triangle XYZ. Since these two triangles are congruent, we did this back in 4.1, I know that angle A, my goodness guys, I'm off my game here. Angle A is congruent to angle X. I know that angle B is congruent to angle Y, and I know that angle C is congruent to angle Z. Those are the corresponding angles in the congruent triangles. And I also know that side AB is congruent to side XY. I know that side BC is congruent to side YZ. And I know that side AC is congruent to side XZ. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through this process and say, okay, I know the triangles are congruent. Since the triangles are congruent, and you'll have to do one of these. So maybe it says, okay, angle C is congruent to angle Z. Now your reason, because you always have to have a reason to prove, your reason is because CPCT, congruent parts of congruent triangles. Okay, that's what we're doing today. It's super similar to what we've been doing, kind of more practice with proofs. Okay, let's get this glued into your notebook. This should be page 55, section 4.4, and we'll cut it down short. We'll say CPCTC. Congruent parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Number 1, my given, and like I've talked about before, it's kind of just easier if you try to copy down as I say it. So given angle KBC is congruent to angle ACB, and angle K is congruent to angle A. Now what you're going to notice today is the proof step. Usually it tells me prove that this triangle is congruent to this triangle. That's not what we're trying to prove today. Today we're trying to prove that corresponding parts are congruent. So we are going to have to prove the triangles are congruent, but that's not the end goal. The end goal here is to prove that side KB is congruent to side AC. All right, here's our picture. So we're going to do like a parallelogram-ish thing with a diagonal. And we will label it. This bottom right will be A, bottom left will be B, and then this top right will be C, and then up here will be K. Okay. All right, so the two big things, we talked about this on Tuesday, okay? Two big things. Mark your pictures, even if you don't think you need to. Mark your pictures, not only with the information in the given, but then the information that you know, either from information in the given or just what you can see in the diagram. So the first thing I'm going to mark is angle KBC is congruent to angle ACB. So those two angles right there. I know they're congruent because the given, they tell me that. It also tells me that angle K is congruent to angle A, so I can mark those two angles. Now, I am going to have to prove that these triangles are congruent. That's not my end goal, but I need that to get to my end goal. So I'm going to have to use either side, 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 angle, or angle, side. I already have two angles. There is no angle, angle, angle. That's one of the no's. You can't do angle, angle, angle. So I need another side. I need a side. What side? BC. Yeah, right there. It's the same side. That's kind of a given there. So let's come up with our game plan. What do I have marked that I can use to help me prove these triangles are congruent? Angle, angle, side. See how the side is not in between the two angles? So it's going to be angle, angle, side. Okay, so we have our game plan. Now remember, for our proof, to prove that these triangles are congruent, I'm going to have to say angle congruent to angle, angle congruent to angle, side congruent to side. Luckily for me, the given already does my two angles. So when I set up my proof, we've got our statements and our reasons. Okay, my first statement, we'll just copy down the given again. Angle KBC is congruent to angle ACB. And angle K is congruent to angle A, which is my given. Okay, so remember, I have to say angle congruent to angle. Got it. Angle congruent to angle. Got it. But I need my side congruent to side. What is the side congruent to side statement going to be? BC congruent to BC. BC is congruent to BC. How do I know BC is congruent to BC? We use this one a lot. Reflexive property of congruence. Now, maybe one of the hardest things to do today, usually they give you how to name the triangles because that's in your proof. Yeah, well, they don't get that. So the one thing you do have to do today, you have to make sure you name the triangles correctly. Because now I'm ready to say, okay, I have angle, angle, side. So I'm ready to say my triangles are congruent. Now, it does not matter how you name the first triangle. So keep things simple. I'm going to name the first triangle ABC. So triangle ABC. It does not matter how you name the first triangle, but it does matter how you name the second triangle. If I'm going to do the A in the first triangle as the first letter, whatever angle corresponds with A needs to be the first letter in the second triangle. What angle corresponds with A? K. So it's going to be triangle K. What angle corresponds with B? C. It's the one that's not marked. So it's going to be KC, and then it'll be B, my last one. Okay? How do I know triangle ABC is congruent to triangle KCB? Angle, angle, side. Okay, now, remember, you know you're not done with your proof. You never know you're never not done with your proof until you end with the proof. So we're ready to say, okay, I know then that KB is congruent to AC. Also notice, you can double check how you named it. See how AC is the first and the last and KB is the first and the last? Okay? I know they are congruent. Here's your reason that you're going to use today. I know the triangles are congruent, so I know the sides are congruent because CPCT, corresponding parts of congruent triangles. That last step is the only thing that's new today, which is the easiest step in the whole proof. Okay? Questions on that? Okay, number 2. Okay, number 2, my given angle TRS and angle TRL are right angles. Angle TRS and angle TRL are right angles. And angle RTS is congruent to angle RTL. Angle RTS is congruent to angle RTL. I am going to prove that side RS is congruent to side RL. And here's what my triangle or my diagram looks like. It's going to be kind of a wide triangle like that. Put the line straight down from the middle. Okay, from left to right on the bottom is going to be S, R, L, and then the T will be at the top. Okay, so very important. You have to mark your diagram. If it's not already marked for you, mark it. But even if it doesn't give you the information directly to mark your diagram, there's a lot of stuff we can mark that we know. So first it says TRS and TRL are right angles. So I could go ahead and mark them as right angles. Now, although it doesn't tell me this directly, since they're both right angles, what do I know? I know they're congruent. So I could probably even take that a step further and say, okay, they're congruent. There, I have a congruent angle. It says RTS and angle RTL. Okay, those are also congruent. So I have two angles that are marked congruent. In order to say that these triangles are congruent, if I already have two angles, remember, you can't do angle, angle, angle. So I have to have a side. What side do I have? TR. Okay. So I have an angle, side, angle. Now remember, in your proof, you have to have angle congruent to angle, side congruent to side, angle congruent to angle. You have to actually say that, okay? So in our proof, we've got our statements and our reasons. We'll start, as always, with our given. So angle TRS and angle TRL are right angles. And angle RTS is congruent to angle RTL because of the given. Now remember, in my proof, I have to actually say angle congruent to angle, side congruent to side, angle congruent to angle. So I have one of the angles. I've already said that those top angles are congruent. Now I've already said that these are right angles, but I have not actually said they're congruent. That's not good enough. You have to actually say they're congruent. Okay, now I'm the kind of person I like to go in order. So since I have my angle, I like to do the side next. So side congruent to side. What's my statement that's going to say side congruent to side? RT congruent to RT. How do I know RT is congruent to RT? Reflexive property of congruence. So I have my angle, the top angle. I have my side. Now I need that bottom angle. How did I know those angles were congruent? Because they're right angles. That's enough to go ahead and say that, okay? I know that angle TRS is congruent to angle TRL. What's that reason? Remember? Yeah, all right angles are congruent. All right angles are congruent. They're both right angles, they have to be congruent. So I have angle, side, angle in my proof. So I'm ready to say, okay, I know that the triangles are congruent. It does not matter how you name the first triangle. Let's say we want to do SRT, triangle SRT. If I name that triangle SRT, what letter is going to come first in the second triangle? L, and then RT. Triangle LRT. What's my reason? Angle, side, angle. Now that I've shown that the triangles are congruent, I know that RS is congruent to RL, and I know that because CPCT, congruent parts of congruent triangles. Like I said, it's kind of more of just practice what we've already been doing, which is one extra, really pretty easy step. Okay, last one here. All right, number 3. All right, my given AB, side AB is congruent to side AC, and M is the midpoint of BC. AB is congruent to AC. M is the midpoint of BC. I'm going to prove angle AMB is congruent to angle AMC. Okay, for my diagram, we're going to have a little sideways triangle. I told second hour, I don't know why we call it a sideways triangle. Who said the triangle has to be a certain way? But you call that a sideways triangle, right? I mean, yeah, sideways triangle. Clearly, it's a sideways triangle. Okay, that has a line going through the middle. And A to the right, B at the top, C at the bottom, and then M will be right there in the middle. What's the first thing I'm going to remind you to do? Mark your diagram. Got to mark your diagram. So, AB is congruent to AC. I know that's congruent because it's in the given. Now, the next thing says M is the midpoint of BC. Now, that doesn't tell me like outright that anything I can mark, but kind of in a way it does. Since M is the midpoint, what does that tell me? Brianna? Yeah, these two segments right here. M's the midpoint. It's the middle of that big segment. So those two segments are congruent. Okay, so what I so far have two sides marked. I have a side and a side. Now here's the thing, okay? If you have two sides, you can have another angle. But guys, remember, if you do another angle, the angle has to be in between the two sides. So it'd have to be this angle right here. Because it has to be side, angle, side. You cannot do angle, side, side. It's inappropriate. Don't do it. Okay? So it would either have to be side, angle, side, or side, side, side. Which one am I going to do? Side, side, side. Yeah, because I've got that middle one too. Okay, so we have our game plan. We're going to do side, side, side. So, start our proof here. Statements, reasons, we'll copy down that given. AB is congruent to AC. M is the midpoint of BC. Now remember, since I'm doing side, 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 I need side congruent to side. I've got one of them. But I need two more statements that says this side's congruent to this side and this side's congruent to this side. What's another set of congruent sides? Do what? MA congruent to MA. Two sets right there. Thank you. How do I know MA is congruent to MA? It is the reflexive property of congruence. Okay, so I've got side and side. I need one more set of sides. What's my last set of sides? BM is congruent to CM. How did you know those are congruent? Remember this one? Yeah. Definition. This one's a definition. Definition of midpoint. M is the midpoint. Cuts those two segments in half. That's just a definition. So I have side, side, side. So I'm ready to say triangle. Let's do ABM. If I name this triangle ABM, what would it be? ACM. Triangle ACM because side, side, side. And my last statement, I know that since the triangles are congruent, angle AMB is congruent to angle AMC because